Hello everyone, I'm CJ, and today I'm going to be getting under the covers of The Magician King by Lev Grossman, which is a sequel to his book The Magicians, and it's supposed to be the second book in a trilogy. Um, my overall thoughts were that I enjoyed the book, but I was often confused on where it was going because the plot bounces around quite a bit, which I'll explain a little bit later. But first, the bookmark that I used to read this book was my Myopic Books bookmark. Myopic Books is a used bookstore in Chicago, Illinois, and it's one of my favorite bookstores. Yeah, it's really cool. Um, yeah, so, anyways, I'm going to get on to the plot. The plot of the story. It's actually broken up into two stories. One of the stories follows the main character, Quentin, on his quest, which the quest changes quite a bit throughout the novel. Which, if you're not paying attention, it can get confusing because the location changes so many times, and he is like his main quest has so many different side quests that the overall quest it kind of loses its importance, I guess. And the other story is it's a bit of a prequel for the character Julia, and I found this story to be the most interesting part of the story because you don't really find out too much about her in the first book, and you find out her whole backstory on how she learned how to do magic and how there's this underground school of magic with like safe houses, and like it's really cool and really interesting, and I found it to be more interesting and entertaining than what Quentin was doing, even though his story was more action adventure related. Um, a lot of people compare Lev Grossman's series, The Magicians and The Magician King, to Narnia or Harry Potter, and I think it's more like Narnia, whereas the first book is more of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the second book is more like Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where they go on this long voyage, and the main purpose of the voyage isn't really explained until the end. Um, what I like about this book is it makes a lot of references to like outside fiction material. Like it references anywhere from Lord Byron to the Teletubbies to Harry Potter. I believe there's some Star Wars references in there. There's some Star Trek references in there, and for someone who likes references like that, this book is good in that sense too. Um, Grossman's dialogue is very witty, and it's also very sarcastic, which it plays in with the narration of the story, where the narration is sarcastic and the dialogue is sarcastic, and it really doesn't balance each other out that well. But there is some humor in the dialogue that I think is really good and really funny, and it just shows how these characters from the real world, like the real world we live in, to these fantasy worlds that they can go into in the story. And I'm going to read an example of the dialogue that I found, which was a good mix between our real world and a fantasy world. Okay, here we go. I need something not too big and not too small, he said. Medium size, and it should be comfortable and quick and sturdy. That's what she said. I see. Will you require guns? No guns. Well, maybe a few guns. A few guns. A few guns? If you please, Admiral, don't be a cock. I'll know it when I see it. And if for some reason I don't, you tell me, all right? Admiral Lacker inclined his head almost imperceptibly to indicate that they had a deal. He would endeavor to be as little of a cock as possible. So that's just some of the dialogue you see in this novel. That it's humorous, but it portrays some of the characteristics of certain characters. And Grossman also does a great job of he's very descriptive with some of his imagery, especially when he's in like palatial buildings. Like he explains the castles and the keeps very well, and he even explains like the most human, like basic human inanimate objects very well, and such detail, and it's almost reminiscent of like The Great Gatsby, where all the materialistic things are very descriptive and very like well placed throughout the novel. And a description of the grandfather clock that they're trying to use it's very good, and I think I'm gonna share that too. As soon as he got up close, he could see that it wasn't going to work. The thing wasn't ticking, but more than that, it just looked too solid. The clock was what it was and nothing more. It was brute, mundane matter, wood and metal. He turned the little knob and opened the glass case and looked in at the hanging pendulum and chimes and whatnot, other brass hardware dangling there impotently. His heart had already gone out of it. It was dark in there. He reached in and rapped the back of the case with his knuckles. Nothing. He closed his eyes. So like just the way he describes like the dead, inanimate impotency of this grandfather clock that's so old that it's no longer able to function, and he does a really good job with like personifying inanimate objects, and I think that's something in books that I really enjoy, or something in writing that I really enjoy. So um, I think that was a good aspect of this novel. Stuff I didn't like about the novel was like I said, it was very sarcastic to the point to where it's almost overbearing, and I like sarcasm. I'm sarcastic. Everyone's sarcastic, I think, but it was almost to the point where it's like every character was sarcastic, and you really couldn't tell who was doing what or who was saying what because they all almost had the same tone of voice. And the only character that really strayed outside of that was Julia, because she barely spoke at all in the novel. But when she did, her dialogue was very important to the story. Um, there was something about this book that like I really wanted to like it, but I couldn't just throw myself at it like if I was reading a different novel, because like it's a fantasy novel but it's set in real life, like our real life. And there's a lot of references to real life in it, and the way people can learn magic, and the way people can learn magic in this novel is really interesting. It's like anyone can learn it as long as you devote that time to it. It's almost relate it to being an intellectual, I guess you could say. You need to know foreign languages, you need to know certain elements of mathematics and science, and it's really cool in that regard. But it kind of takes the mysticism out of it, I guess you can say. But that's not what Grossman was going for. He was really going for a realistic approach. Um, so with that said, I guess I like the novel, but it just like it wasn't like I couldn't say I would read it again. Well, I would read it again, but not I wouldn't say it's like a top 5 or a top 10. I would invest time into it though. I would read the first book in the first book first. It's The Magicians by Lev Grossman. And if I were to give this book a rating, I would give it 3.5, because the plot jumped around too much. Um, the dialogue was really sarcastic to the point where it was overbearing. But the way he ties the two stories between Julia and Quentin together really made the story worth reading. And it could be described as the Chronicles of Narnia for adults and without many religious allegories. So if you want to read this, I recommend it. I give it 3.5 stars. It would have been 4 stars, but there's just something like I couldn't like I wanted to keep reading, but like I just didn't want to read. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But once I got about halfway through, it kind of just kicked off for me, and the first novel, The Magicians, was like that too. So, um, The Magician King by Lev Grossman, 3.5 stars. Um, the next book I'm going to be reviewing, I already read. I read it for a class last week. It's Night by Elie Wiesel, and that's the next book I'm going to be reviewing. I should have it up soon. Mark was supposed to review Magician King with me, but we had some conflicting schedules, and he was unable to help me with this one. So maybe in the future, Mark's going to come on and do a different book with me. If you want to leave your comments on the Magician King or something about Night that I'm reading next, post them in the comments. A lot of people leave comments on my Facebook. That's cool too, but post them downstairs in the comments section. If you like the video, like it. If you want to subscribe to me, That's cool too. Thanks for getting under the covers with me, and next I will be doing Night by Elie Wiesel.